Discover the hidden truth that left my husband. Speechless, the unexpected pearl earring moment. Claire stared down at the pearl earrings, her grandmother's legacy nestled in her trembling palms. The elegant, handcrafted pieces sparkled with a brilliance that both comforted and tormented her. Each glimmer a reminder of familial love entwined with waves of guilt. What was she willing to sacrifice for the survival of her family? The question spiraled in her mind like a whirlpool, relentless and unnerving. Tom walked in, his shoulders slumped as if the world had landed on them. Claire's heart sank at the sight of him, the man she loved now a husk of the confident engineer he'd once been. Their home, once filled with laughter and dreams, now echoed with dreaded bills and looming deadlines. As she tucked the earrings into her pocket, unease tightened her chest. She felt she stood at the edge of a precipice, torn between hope and despair. Could they withstand this onslaught of financial ruin together, or was the pressure tearing them apart? At school, Claire stood before her students, a beacon of resilience disguised as a teacher. But deep inside, self-doubt gnawed at her. Their bright faces were a stark contrast to her internal chaos. She feared she was failing them, failing Tom. If she could rally the community, perhaps their collective strength could serve as a lifeline. But what about her pride? The earrings held more than monetary value. They were woven into her identity, part of who she was. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Tom sat at the kitchen table, his gaze long fixed on a stack of bills that must have felt like a mountain to him. Claire could picture the weight of inadequacy he wore like a heavy cloak, suffocating and unyielding. How could she explain the emotional struggle that gripped her heart? If she could sell the earrings, would that signal defeat, an admission that their lives were spiraling beyond their control? Or would it grant them the lifeline necessary to breathe again? As nights wore on, silence between them thickened, each unspoken word a dagger of distance. Tension crackled in the air, heavy and raw. Claire felt as if she were walking a tightrope, one misstep threatening an entire fall. The fundraiser began to take shape, her plan sprouting wings as excitement coursed through her veins, but doubts flickered in and out like fireflies in the dusk. Was it the right decision, or a desperate grasp at straws? In her heart, a cacophony of fear and determination clashed. Claire envisioned the earrings and their rich history, but what would they mean if they lost everything? The moment stretched achingly as she prepared to face her choices. Heart pounding in her chest, Claire's breath hitched. Could she fuse her two worlds together, honoring her grandmother while fighting to hold on to her future? As the clock ticked closer to the fundraiser, a revelation loomed, urgent and unavoidable, threatening to unravel the fragile fabric of their lives. Would Tom understand, or would he stand speechless before the truth she had tried to shield him from? The answer felt poised on the edge of a razor, every heartbeat a countdown to a moment neither of them could foresee. Claire's mind raced as she paced the dim hallway, the weight of the decision pressing on her like a shroud. The pearl earrings tugged at her consciousness, each glimmer a painful reminder of her past. What had once been a symbol of love now felt like a millstone around her neck. It was time to confront her choices, to decide what mattered most in this unraveling tapestry of life. Tom's figure remained a fixture at the kitchen table, his shoulders hunched. His shadow loomed larger than the worries that cloaked their home. She could almost hear the self-reproach echoing in his silence. Claire felt a fierce urgency to act, to pull them both out of this quagmire before it swallowed them whole. "I need to talk to him," she urged herself, but the words caught in her throat. Taking a deep breath, Claire summoned her courage and stepped into the kitchen. The stark light illuminated the weariness etched across Tom's face. She perched on the edge of the table, her heart racing as their eyes met. "Tom," she began, her voice betraying a hint of vulnerability, "we need to talk about everything." She felt the tight coil of tension in the air, a palpable force that urged for release. Tom looked up, surprise momentarily flickering before resignation flooded back. "What is there to say, Claire? The bills keep piling up, and we're not making any progress," he murmured, his tone devoid of hope. Claire's heart sank further. His words were a dagger, cutting deeper than any silence could. "Maybe we can brainstorm some ways to make more money, or—" She hesitated, unsure if she could voice the tumultuous thought gnawing at her. "Or we could consider selling some things. I mean, there's the jewelry." Tom's eyes flared with something akin to anger mixed with despair. "You want to sell the earrings?" he snapped, and Claire flinched. "Those are your grandmother's." "Exactly," she shot back, passion igniting in her chest. "But they won't save us. They won't keep the lights on or the rent paid, Tom." The truth hung heavy between them. Staring at her, Tom's expression softened with a trace of defeat. "I hate this feeling, Claire. I hate that we're here, that we're even discussing this." His voice dropped to a whisper, as if admitting vulnerability could shatter them both. "I do too," Claire replied, her voice trembling. "But what if we decided to tackle this together, instead of letting things spiral? I'm willing to fight for us, our future." Over a span of moments, Claire watched as understanding flickered in Tom's hazel eyes. The weight of their shared struggle started to ease, drawing them closer again. As they spoke, plans began to form, ideas bubbling up through the thick fog of despair. That evening, Claire found herself creating a list of ways to save money and earn extra income. The act of formulation breathed life back into her, a spark she desperately needed. But buried beneath the excitement was the persistent shadow of doubt. The earrings represented more than heritage. They symbolized a past she wasn't ready to fully relinquish. Her fingers brushed against the smooth surface of her phone as she prepared to document her thoughts. A small part of her considered recording a message to share with her students, a lesson on resilience that intertwined her challenge and growth. Seated on the bed, Claire wrestled with her next move. The message was more than a mere educational tool. It was an opportunity to expose her vulnerability, to let others in on her struggle. She would demonstrate that asking for help could be an act of strength, a decision without shame. As she pressed record, the screen illuminated her face, revealing a raw vulnerability she had never shown before, even to herself. The time has come for honest conversations, not just about overcoming challenges, but admitting when we're breaking. Her voice steadied, fueled by a desire to share her truth. And there it was, the turning point. In revealing her struggle, she found clarity in her purpose. But could she truly embrace the complexities of revealing everything about herself? With the camera still recording, Claire felt the familiar conflict roiling inside. Was she courageous enough to expose this raw truth, not just about the earrings, but about every fear that loomed large in her life? The camera captured more than a message. It held the potential to redefine her. What would emerge from these revelations? Behind the lens, a moment of truth lingered, pending and electrifying as anticipation crackled in the air. Who would listen? Would they understand? And most importantly, could Claire accept that the journey to rebuild would disrupt everything she held dear? Claire paused, the recording light blinking back at her like a silent participant in her tumultuous thoughts. She had never stripped herself bare in front of a camera, not like this. Her heart thudded in her chest, each beat resonating with the weight of her hidden fears and aspirations. Would her students see strength in her vulnerability, or simply pity? The realization struck hard. Her vulnerability wasn't just a lesson for her students. It was an essential layer of her identity that she had kept buried, hidden beneath the demands of daily life. The pressure to maintain a facade of confidence and control had stifled her growth, turning her into a shadow of who she wanted to be. As Claire spoke into the lens, she felt the burden of years of pride lifting ever so slightly. "It's easy to pretend everything is fine when deep down, you know it isn't," she confessed. "But maybe there's power in admitting our struggles." Each word transformed her anxiety into a roadmap, directing her toward self-acceptance. She talked of the earrings, their sparkles synonymous with a life rich in memories, but also bleeding her dry emotionally. In speaking about them, she unlocked a door to healing, an opportunity to reconcile her past with her present. "I've always thought they represented love," she said softly. "But what if they are just a reminder of what I've lost, what I can't hold on to any longer?" Finishing the recording, Claire sat in silence, the screen darkened but her thoughts racing. Perhaps, in this moment of exposure, she could redefine her relationship with that past, her heartbeat synchronized to the changes she could now embrace. What would happen next? She had opened up a channel she couldn't close. Her truth was now entwined with others in ways she couldn't anticipate. The next day, she found herself checking her video analytics obsessively, a cocktail of hope and dread swirling within. As views trickled in, so did comments, some supportive, others critical. One user's simple assertion, "You're not alone," struck a deep chord. Yet another brusquely questioned her motives, challenging her to reveal more than just her surface struggles. This ignited a flame in her determination. She couldn't afford to backtrack now. Intrigued by the divide forming in the responses, Claire began to ponder how she could channel this attention. What if she could structure a dialogue around shared vulnerabilities? Encapsulating her experience into lessons on resilience could gather more support and help others, but it would require more layers of honesty. Driven by this thought, she arranged a small meeting with Tom. "I want us to consider hosting a kind of workshop at the community center," she proposed, excitement mixed with anxiety rushing through her. "I'd discuss my financial struggles and how sharing them has helped me begin my healing process. We could even bring in individuals from diverse backgrounds, encourage multiple voices." Tom's brow furrowed, clearly skeptical. "Is that really what people want to hear about, Claire? Isn't it just going to open old wounds? Isn't it better to talk about them openly than to let them fester? Besides, I think there's a hunger for these conversations. We can create a safe space for people dealing with their own thresholds." The idea solidified Claire's resolve. This wasn't merely about her anymore. It was about creating something larger, a platform for others. They deliberated, the discussion punctuated by moments of silence where the weight of their circumstances lingered. Claire felt invigorated, a sense of purpose rekindled. But beneath her excitement lay the gnawing question. Was she strong enough to not just expose her story, but take on the responsibility of guiding others through their own narratives? As they wrapped up their talk, doubts nudged at her again. Could she truly facilitate a conversation meant for collective healing? The tension swelled in her chest. This could either propel her forward or drag her down further into her own insecurities. With decisions lingering, a new wave of urgency coursed through Claire. The time for action was now, and the stakes felt impossibly high. What if the very act of engaging with others turned the mirrors she held up to herself into abysses of doubt? The door to discovery was creaking ajar. But what lay beyond? Would she find liberation or resistance from deeper fears still lurking in the shadows? Claire sat at her desk, fingers tapping nervously against the polished wood. She had envisioned what a workshop might look like, a safe space she was trying to cultivate. Yet as the practical details settled in her mind, that familiar shadow of self-doubt crept back, urging her to put on her constructed armor of professionalism. The walls of her tiny office felt like they were closing in, amplifying her insecurities. What if her students saw her not as a mentor, but as a broken vessel? Would they recoil from her truth? Grappling with the gravity of her intentions, she realized the weight of this endeavor rested not only on her shoulders, but also on those potentially seeking solace in her honesty. With an elbow propped on the table, Claire flipped open her notebook, filled with jagged lines of thought and fragments of dialogue ideas. The first page bore none other than the phrase she wished to avoid, emerging as a contemplative itch. What if I fail? Shaking her head, she forced out her breath in a rush, as if that would liberate her from the grip of those invasive thoughts. She then turned to her laptop, determined to type an outline for the workshop, but every key tapped echoed like a weighty drum in her ears, each word a proclamation of her vulnerability. 3 steps to confronting financial fears, she wrote, followed by real stories, real strength. She paused, considering her own truth and how it would resonate with others. Using her own financial situation for reference was a risk, one that could cut deep. Yet embodying her reality and facing that risk might also forge connections with others grappling with similar struggles. What if her story inspired change? What if hearing someone else's truth provided a lifeline to someone feeling lost? The sound of an email notification broke her concentration, a message from Tom. As she opened it, anxiety rippled through her. He offered skepticism, but with an unexpected twist. I think we need more than just stories. It needs to be actionable, solutions, not just confessions. His words wrapped around her like a warm blanket, yet confined her like chains. Yes, she could share strategies. That was an essential part of making this workshop effective. But how did one quantify the healing that came from honesty? Striking a balance between emotional unveiling and practical steps was a precise tightrope walk. Claire felt an urge to respond, yet the question loomed once again. What do I really want from all of this? Was it validation, acceptance, or something deeper? As the day merged into night, she Googled organizations that specialized in financial literacy, pulling resources that could complement her lived experiences. A spark of innovation ignited within her. What if participants crafted their own stories together, generating action plans reflecting their truths? Sighing, she leaned back, feeling an inkling of progress, but the gnawing uncertainty resurfaced. What if she unearthed stories darker than her own? The thought unsettled her. Could she confront that depth if it emerged? The following day would see her not just emerging as leader, but perhaps as a fellow traveler through shared losses and hopes. The idea both thrilled and terrified her. As she processed these developments, an unexpected urgency pulsed through her. The upcoming workshop was the start of a journey, but how prepared was she to guide others when her own path remained fractious and undefined? Could she handle the weight of their stories while wrestling with her own transformations? Claire took in a deep breath, ink flowing more freely as her resolve solidified. But when she looked at the screen, a new question loomed larger, demanding attention. Was her truth truly enough to carry others into their own light? The uncertainty lingered like mist, thick and enveloping. She had to face that fog head-on, ready or not. The air in Claire's office felt charged with anticipation as the workshop approached. She stirred, her excitement tethered by an undercurrent of dread. Each passing moment heightened her self-imposed urgency. What if she failed to gather a group ready to embrace the reckoning she envisioned? What if her attempts at honesty only served to expose her inadequacies, echoing louder as a reminder of everything she felt unqualified to face? Her laptop screen blared back at her, an insistent reminder of the shared mission she had yet to fully define. She began drafting an agenda, but soon found herself spiraling into tangential thoughts, fixating on her lack of authority. Then came Tom's voice in her head, questioning her intentions, demanding substance over sentiment. The concepts of vulnerability and practicality warred within her. What could she offer that would satiate both her yearning for authenticity and the expectations of those she sought to help? She closed her eyes, letting her mind drift, and pictured the faces of her potential participants. Their expressions were a mix of skepticism and hope, mirroring her own internal struggle. Abandoning her table, Claire paced the room, mulling over her ideas. In that restless moment, a fleeting memory surfaced. Sitting at her grandmother's kitchen table, the older woman sharing the lessons she had learned through hardship. "It's not the hardship that defines us, dear. It's how we rise from it," she had said, her voice steady. Claire realized now that it had taken a lifetime for her grandmother to find that resolve, and it required sharing not just the successes, but also the defeats that led to them. Determined, Claire returned to her desk. Each word now felt like a small act of rebellion against the self-doubt that had tried to anchor her. What if instead of fearing her own story, she leaned into it? She could frame her vulnerabilities as a source of strength. "Building resilience through financial transparency," she typed, allowing a surge of pride to swell within her. Suddenly, a realization struck. A plan began to crystallize. Instead of solely focusing on structured lessons, she could include breakout sessions where participants could share their individual experiences. This collaboration would not only empower them, but would also take some weight off her shoulders. If they constructed their stories together, the collective honesty could pull them all toward healing. Claire's fingers flew across the keyboard. She finalized the agenda, ensuring there were engaging components where fear could transform into fuel. Stories of hardship, recovery, and tenacity could be woven into actionable steps that embodied how to build financial resilience. Yet, despite crafting a strategy, another question loomed. How would she guide these participants through their own painful admissions when her journey remained a tangled web? It felt like she was asking them to delve into darkness she herself had yet to navigate fully. She shook her head, chastising herself for the panic rising in her chest. Taking a deep breath, Claire decided she would embrace her uncertainty instead of resisting it. Her students deserved her authenticity, not a facade of assurance. Accepting this notion liberated her in a strange way. If she let them witness her vulnerabilities, it could forge an unbreakable bond, fostering an environment ripe for transformative growth. As she leaned back, looking at the clutter of her desk, her heart raced with a mix of fear and exhilaration. She envisioned the participants, their stories intertwining in a tapestry of resilience. She felt her own narrative becoming a thread in that fabric, one waiting to be sewn into a larger framework of healing. But just as clarity surged, a new fear flickered within her mind like a candle under a gust. What if those who attended were traumatized beyond belief? Could she navigate their pain without being overwhelmed by it herself? It was this chilling doubt that hungered for an answer, ready to overshadow the light of her newfound resolve. How could she stand beside them if she wasn't ready to face the shadows lurking just beneath the surface? With the clock ticking down to the workshop, the pressure mounted, and Claire felt the weight of this uncharted territory closing in on her once more. The moment was approaching where she must decide if she was prepared to confront the depths of her own fears while braving the storm of others. Claire sat at her desk, the workshop looming closer with each ticking second. The binder she had prepared lay open before her, but its pages blurred into a white noise of anxiety. She had done the initial planning, but the impending reality of confronting pain, a notion as tangible as the air in the room, sent chills down her spine. Doubt clawed at her insides, licking at the flickering flame of resolve she'd ignited merely hours earlier. Incorporating their stories. "Yes," she murmured, letting herself roll the concept around her mind for a moment. It felt as electrifying as it was terrifying. What if they were willing to get vulnerable? What if they weren't? The precarious balance of certainty and fear made her stomach churn. In an effort to calm the storm brewing within her, Claire closed her eyes again, trying to summon the steadying presence of her grandmother. "Rise from it," she whispered, as if calling upon the spirit of her guiding voice. A clarity pierced through the cacophony of her concerns. Were her participants not human? Did they not share the same insecurities? If she allowed herself to be broken with them, would they not rise together, hand in hand? Gulping, Claire's heart began to thud in unison with her newfound determination. She grabbed her phone and scrolled through her contacts until she found Amanda's name. Amanda had been perfecting the art of vulnerability at the company's recent initiatives. The women had connected during project discussions, and now Claire sought her counsel. "Amanda, can you meet me for coffee?" Claire's voice came out steadier than she felt. "Of course. What's up?" Amanda's infectious positivity rippled through the line. Claire hesitated but pressed on. "I'm gearing up for something new, something different. I need a little advice on embracing vulnerability in a workshop." "Creating space for others to share is always a balance," Amanda said. "But start by exposing your own truth. Show them that honesty can ignite change. You've got this, Claire." Her reassurance felt like fresh air, but as she hung up, Claire's mind shifted again to Tom's critical voice. Is it really that easy, she thought? Would participants consider her merely playing a role, failing to embody that which she preached? She picked nervously at the corners of her agenda, her breaths shallow and fast. The familiar routine of self-doubt began to set in. She envisioned the room filled with participants who were judging her every word. What if they saw through her facade? What if she fumbled the entire workshop? Adrenaline coursed through her as she confronted the images running wild in her head, yet she challenged them, pulling from the well of resolve that had grown since she had decided to expose her vulnerabilities. She recognized something profound. Courage wasn't an absence of fear, but perhaps it was the ability to risk exposure regardless. Inspiration ignited again, and she began jotting notes on her agenda, reminding herself that vulnerability wasn't a sign of weakness, but a gateway to connection. But in the swirling mix of hope and determination, another fear gnawed at her. What if someone shared a story that dragged her back into her own unresolved pain? The shadows she danced around began to thicken, lurking just beyond her line of sight, whispering old fears. Claire rubbed her temples as she attempted to wrestle with the troubling thoughts. How could she navigate someone else's suffering when her own was still an open wound? Tentatively, she began to reshuffle her agenda, incorporating discussion points about coping strategies, shared experiences, and frameworks for prioritizing mental well-being amidst vulnerability. It dawned on her then, her workshop wasn't just for the attendees, but also for herself. It was through guiding them that she might find her own healing. As she finally took a breath to look at the clock, Claire felt the weight of dread still press upon her. She was standing on the edge of a precipice, fighting the urge to pull back, but she vowed to leap. Perhaps the act of sharing her fears would allow her to construct a bridge to aid others, and in the moments before falling, she might just find her wings. With a final, decisive keystroke, she labeled the last section of her agenda. Navigating Our Shadows, Together. Just as she absorbed the significance of that title, fatigue washed over her. What left her unsettled was the realization that through guiding others, she may need to face the shadows she had long avoided. Would they be too much to handle? Could she dive into that darkness while ensuring she remained stable? The uncertainty was daunting, but a flicker of anticipation pierced through as she reminded herself. The time had come to face that darkness and emerge not just for others, but for herself as well. As the morning sun penetrated Claire's office, casting a warm glow over the scattered papers, she felt both a sense of urgency and trepidation. Each word on her agenda carried weight, none more so than navigating our shadows together. The mere thought of that title echoed through her mind like a call to arms. Yet doubt gnawed at her as she meticulously rehearsed her opening lines. Her phone buzzed, jolting her from her spiral of anxiety. It was Amanda, messaging to check in. Claire hesitated before typing back. Ready to be real today. It felt both liberating and suffocating to put it into words. Her own vulnerability began to spill out before she even stepped into the room. Time passed slowly, every second ticking with a palpable tempo of anxiety. Claire ran her fingers over the pages of her binder, pausing at the open section dedicated to her personal stories. Would her experiences resonate? Like ripples on water, She imagined sharing her past, each vulnerability an opportunity for connection. But what if the intensity of her own history pulled her under, drowning her in those memories? Claire's thoughts flared with unwanted intensity. The bleak shadows of betrayal, the harshness of loss, and the echo of a silence that had once defined her. She pressed her nails into her palm, searching for a grounding sensation. No, this was not just about Aunt Lila's struggle with addiction or the heartbreak of her first love. It was about the authenticity that she sought to inspire in others. The irony struck her. Perhaps her journey began with the acceptance of her fractured past rather than avoidance. Resolute, Claire began rewriting her agenda, shuffling the pieces to allow for more reflection. This wasn't merely an exercise in vulnerability. It was a testament to her evolution. She crafted questions aimed at inviting narratives, not only from others, but from herself. What have you learned about yourself in your darkest moments? That would be the question to lead with, she decided. The hours dwindled, and before she knew it, it was nearly time to head to the meeting room. She gathered her things, each item demarcating a step toward the collective experience that awaited. As she walked through the office toward the workshop, Claire grappled with an internal monologue. Could surrendering her past be a gift to others, exposing her rawness, or would it spiral into an emotional debacle she couldn't contain? Entering the room, a rush of warmth greeted her amidst the hesitant smiles of her participants. This room of strangers and acquaintances would become a sanctuary, a space for shared humanity. As they exchanged small talk, Claire noticed the growing tension in her chest, a visceral reminder of the personal stories looming just beneath the surface of each participant's skin. Taking a deep breath, she let her gaze sweep over them and cleared her throat, gripping the podium. "Welcome," she began, her voice gaining resonance. "Today, we are not just here to talk. We are here to connect, to navigate our shadows together. I hope you'll join me in exploring the places we often avoid." Doubt flickered like a candle's flame in her mind, but she pressed on. Each passing moment deepened her resolve. It was no longer about her fears. It was about both their healing journeys and her own. As she posed the opening question, the silence that followed echoed deeply. It was the space between their stories, the collective breath before a plunge into vulnerability, one that Claire knew was both frightening and exhilarating. The first volunteer spoke, and with every word, the emotional tide began to shift, washing away the initial hesitance, for the sharing was met with understanding and acknowledgement. Claire felt the tension within her start to unwind. Each narrative resonated in the room, unveiling tiny flickers of light where darkness had once reigned. But in that moment of unfolding, a heavy truth took root. Some stories remain hidden for a reason, and perhaps hers was one of them. As she prepared to share her own story, piercing heartbeats of unease surged back, whispering of the shadows that still lurked inside her. Would her truth offer solace, or would it tear open wounds that had never fully healed? Just before she spoke, a voice from the back interrupted, a hesitant yet curious participant wanting to know why vulnerability mattered and whether even those most scarred could contribute meaningfully. The sudden intensity of the situation coalesced into a question Claire didn't expect, and it hung like a potential storm cloud, igniting a fear she had nearly conquered. What was she willing to risk to wield her truth? What would it reveal, not just about them, but about herself? As the anticipated moment crashed upon her, Claire took a deep breath, realizing the answer lay in that very breath, amid the silence of vulnerability and truths yet to be unearthed. The weight of the question hovered, thickening the air, punctuated by Claire's shallow breaths. How often had she faced a moment where everything she was hinged on a solitary inquiry? She could feel her heartbeat escalating, echoes of anxiety clashing with a burgeoning determination. Gazing at the participant who had spoken, she recognized the sincerity etched in their eyes. The urge to delve deeper, to unearth layers of truth, surged through her. "I think vulnerability matters because it creates a bridge," Claire began, her voice steadier than she felt. It connects us to each other, our experiences intertwining like threads in a tapestry. We often carry the weight of our scars alone, but sharing them lightens that load, doesn't it? A murmur of agreement fluttered through the group, emboldening her. Yet inside, she waged a war with her narrative. As the other participants shared, each story morphing into an intimate dialogue, Claire grappled with her own instinct to retreat. She sensed her experiences lurking in the shadows, hesitant to step into the light. Would her wounds heal others or worsen their own? As she absorbed their vulnerabilities, she caught snippets of her past in their words. The betrayal of trust, the pang of loss. Each monologue chipped away at her resolve to withhold her most profound truths. Claire realized there was a redemptive power in reciprocity, a vital exchange in vulnerability. With every ounce of courage, she prepared to step into her own spotlight, ready or not. When the moment finally arrived, the room felt charged, a shared breath collectively held in anticipation. I struggled with vulnerability for a long time, Claire admitted, feeling the uneasiness transition into resolve. But my story took a transformative turn, a pivotal moment catalyzed by the realization that concealing pain only ultimates isolation. She hesitated, grappling with the impending self-disclosure. Years ago, I discovered secrets that changed everything. The day I found an earring, a pearl earring in a pocket I thought I knew too well. Claire's voice softened, colored with memories that surfaced like translucent ripples on her emotional landscape. The group leaned in, curiosity knitting invisible strings between them. What followed blew apart the facade of a life I had come to accept. It was the truth behind those delicate pearls that unraveled far more than I anticipated, a tale of love and betrayal intertwined, shattering the picture-perfect narrative I had constructed. As Claire spoke, she felt the pulse of self-reflection and connection grow stronger, pulsing through the room. Her apprehension began to melt away, revealing not just new depths of understanding, but unexpected threads of strength she never knew she possessed. With every word, she invited scrutiny and compassion. The narrative flowed naturally, revealing not just her past, but an empowering lens through which to view her future. A true ally emerged within her, one that had the capacity to transform her past from a place of fear to a stepping stone of evolution. Every participant held vigil as she revealed the cascading effects of that moment, binding them all by shared human experiences. Claire found herself leaning into her own story, not just telling it, but reclaiming it as part of her identity, shattering the mirage she once lived behind. As she concluded her tale, her heart thudded with the exhilaration of liberation, although shadows still lingered. It wasn't merely about revealing her truth, it was about the aftermath, the different facets of herself yet to be explored. At the back of the room, the same curious voice chimed in again, but this time with a sharper edge. But what did you learn about the nature of love? It was a challenging question, cutting through the warmth like a sudden breeze, forcing Claire to confront the underlying currents of forgiveness and acceptance in both others and herself. What did she feel now, in this vulnerable unfolding? Would the answers soothe her heart or open the gates to yet another storm? As Claire faced an uncharted territory of origins and reflections, she understood her next steps would be as vital as the words she had just spoken. How would this newfound understanding redefine who she was? Claire's journey had reached a pivotal moment, and she stood on the brink of discovery, knowing well that every truth unearthed would lead her closer to self-acceptance or deeper into the shadows. Claire's pulse quickened as the question lingered in the air, heavy and yet invigorating. She felt the weight of its implications. What did you learn about the nature of love? It rolled around in her mind like a stone, challenging her to dig deep and confront unresolved feelings. In that moment, she realized that the answer would not only reflect her past, but also shape her future. Closing her eyes momentarily, Claire breathed deeply, drawing in the quiet energy of the room around her. Everyone was waiting, eager yet patient. Instead of shying away from the challenge, she embraced the discomfort, recognizing it as a necessary step in her growth. What she had learned about love wasn't simplistic. It was a mosaic of joy, pain, misunderstanding, and resilience. Love, she began, her voice steadying as she pieced her thoughts together, isn't merely about acceptance or perfection. It includes the willingness to navigate through the storms that sometimes feel insurmountable. She felt the truth of her words grounding her. After discovering the earring, I confronted the idea that love can be both a source of comfort and a catalyst for turmoil. What the betrayal revealed to me was that love also requires honesty, about oneself and about others. As she spoke, Claire's mind flashed back to that day, all the moments that led to her introspection layered with emotions she had consistently suppressed. She had embraced vulnerability with the group, but now she needed to confront vulnerability in a more personal sense. Speaking openly, she discovered the power of naming her own truths. Every eye in the room was fixed on her, a silent agreement woven into the fabric of shared understanding. The love I once thought was invincible was actually fragile, she continued. And it took that fragility to push me to examine my own beliefs and boundaries. But the audience's gaze only intensified her internal fear. Could she truly honor the evolution of her understanding? Would they accept her expanded definition of love? Each moment felt like a leap off a precipice into unknown waters. Yet Claire could feel the ground shifting beneath her. To stay on solid footing, she needed to be honest about her deeper emotions and the significance they carried. What matters is not a pursuit of perfection, but rather acknowledging the imperfection that exists within us all, Claire concluded, searching for the nods of affirmation that reassured her. A voice echoed softly in her mind, urging her to dig deeper. By peeling back layers of hurt and assumptions, I learned the importance of communication in relationships. It's messy and raw, but ultimately rewarding. Just as she concluded, Claire felt a tightening in her chest. She had put down a piece of her history, but the question still loomed, a stark invitation to dive further. It felt as if that question had morphed from a single inquiry into a labyrinth of personal reckoning. From the back of the room, another participant leaned forward, echoing a common thread. But what about forgiveness? How can love persist in the face of betrayal? The air swirled with tension, knitting Claire's heart tightly as she contemplated the answer. She had ventured into dangerous territory, opening wounds she had thought to be healing. Now it was time to confront her deepest fears. Was she ready to forgive, not just others, but herself too? Claire stared into the eyes of her peers, seeking and granting courage in equal measure. It was not just a matter of moving forward. It was about understanding the complexities woven within relationships, the strands of love intertwined with the threads of pain. With so much yet to unravel, she realized this was not simply about answering their questions. It was about embodying her truths. She stood taller, her voice firming with conviction. To love is to learn how to forgive, not just the mistakes of others, but our own misjudgments. And sometimes, the hardest part is forgiving ourselves for holding on to pain. Aware that her responses were likely to spark even more inquiries, Claire embraced the challenge. She was on the brink of uncovering something monumental within herself. She could feel the layers shifting as the questions piled high. What truths would emerge once she committed to examine the darker corners of her own heart? Would embracing love's complexities allow her to redefine her relationship with herself and others? It was now or never. Claire took a step forward, ready to embrace the next chapter of her journey into understanding, feeling the world around her pulse with potential. She could feel the specter of her own fears awaiting answers, and with that comfort came the realization that every unresolved part of her story was a door half open, waiting to be fully discovered. Claire stood at the edge of a profound revelation as the workshop began to wind down, the weight of her vulnerability translating into a tangible strength that filled the room. Each story shared had illuminated the connections forged through their joint experiences, thrilling yet terrifying. As participants echoed back their thoughts on love, forgiveness, and resilience, the boundaries between mentor and student blurred. This was not merely a workshop, it was a crucible of shared humanity. In this transformation, Claire confronted not only her past, but her future. She had dared to peel back the layers of her heart, exposing scars and victories alike. Everyone had stood witness to her evolution, an experience woven not just with words, but with authentic engagement that galvanized her mission. The shadows of self-doubt that had cloaked her for so long began to withdraw, replaced by a solid sense of self and purpose. Emboldened, she addressed the final question, the one that carved its way into her consciousness. How can love persist after betrayal? Taking a deep breath, Claire launched into her response with newfound clarity. Love can endure, she stated, her voice rich with conviction, when we choose to understand our truths and the truths of others. When we acknowledge that betrayal, while painful, is an opportunity for growth. Love is not a statue on a pedestal. It is more like a river, dynamic and ever-changing. The room hung on her words, absorbing the depth of meaning as she bridged personal experience with universal themes. She had become the living embodiment of her newfound philosophy. Each acknowledgement of her transformation fed her confidence, confirming that her past did not define her future. It merely shaped her. As the workshop drew to a close, Claire felt an exhilaration surge within her, a cathartic release that arose from confronting her fears and learning to embrace the complexities of love. Participants shared final thoughts, expressing gratitude for the safe space she had fostered, and Claire realized her efforts had not only inspired others, but had also solidified her own journey toward healing. She had established a new narrative, one that resonated with authenticity and genuine aspiration. Then, in a reflective moment, something extraordinary unfolded. As they prepared to leave, one participant approached her, their eyes glistening. "You don't even realize how impactful your words were today. You made vulnerability feel like strength. Thank you for showing me it's okay to be imperfect." In that moment, Claire accepted the acknowledgement not as validation, but as recognition of shared struggle. It was the final stitch in the tapestry of her own personal growth. As they exchanged heartfelt farewells, Claire understood that she had crossed a crucial threshold. She had proven to herself that her fears were no longer shackles, but stepping stones to evolving resilience. Accepting that vulnerability was a strength rather than a weakness marked a significant pivot in her life, enabling a fuller expression of her identity. With each person leaving, Claire felt an undeniable strength emanating from her as she acknowledged the tremendous growth that had occurred over the course of these sessions. It was time to let go. The pearl earrings, once a burden woven with guilt and grief, now felt like a relic of the past left behind, their essence forever part of her journey, but no longer a determinant of her worth. In that space of clarity, Claire penned a message to her students, not as a teacher, but as an equal participant in the journey of life. Empowered by her experiences and the shared narratives of others, she envisioned facilitating more workshops that could lead to genuine connection and healing. The path ahead was bright with possibilities. Claire was not merely stepping forward. She was leaping into her future, resolute in her newfound confidence and commitment to embrace both the light and dark within herself and others. Empowered by her journey of self-discovery, it was Claire's time to shine. Now listen closely. You need to subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. This is the moment to show your support. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and help others discover their own path to growth. Comment below with your reactions and theories about this incredible ending, and don't wait even one more second to share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Your actions could inspire someone's transformation today.